Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Amy McNee with Informatica, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Heather Tubbs, VP Global Head of Risk Analytics and Platforms at Visa. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you for having me part of this conversation, Amy.
When you think about data, how it's used, when you think about, the application of AI with your data, what are some other things that you think about that are uh, potential concerns and things that other people should maybe think about as they're planning out their strategy?
It's a great question. To me, the biggest, because the ethics is kind of like, again, backbone to what we solve for, is the speed at which we need AI and our increasingly demanding AI capabilities. The pace at which the speed of the need for it is much quicker than the readiness and responsible use that tend to happen with AI. So, especially throughout the organization, I see so many GPT, not even at our organization, just across, you kind of mentioned it before, so many GPT options that are out there. But the speed at which we're doing that, it's almost the easiest way of getting an AI solution out there. And so we're seeing that a lot. But when it comes to identification, anomalous behaviors, real time alerting capabilities, making sure that we can keep up with the pace of the need for that is significant. And it really is something that as a data team, we're the ones building it and we're the ones coming through and creating the capabilities, doing it in a way that's thoughtful, in a way that makes sense, and not just saying, okay, here's a solution and a product, and then we'll iterate on it for the next year. Like, how do we make sure it's right the first time, or at least 80% right the first time, so that we can iterate from the right perspective so that we're creating the right need for the tool. So it has incredible potential, but there's also the wary risk associated with, you know, biases, for example, in a model. If you're moving too quickly, you're not thinking about the right inputs that go into it or how to interpret those inputs. When you think about the speed at which we move, how are we making sure that we're using those ethical guidelines and privacy regulations so that we're not leading to misuse or unintended consequences, just the speed at which we're moving. So it's just about striking the right balance and harnessing the power of AI in the right way to drive innovation and efficiency. That's really important. It does keep me up at night because I'm in a call almost weekly at this point around new AI solutions and love the idea of it. Don't want to hold us back from it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way and be careful about how we find the benefits of AI. Just because it's the new big topic right now. So.
I actually hear from a lot of companies that I talk to that they're really struggling to go from that experimentation phase into full production and to really scale their
Mhm.
AI use cases. And a lot of the things that do hold them back are number one, things like literacy within their organization, things like data quality. Because if they don't have those things, then the risk of bias or using the data incorrectly go way up. And
Mhm.
so a lot of companies I also am seeing use cases that are starting very internally focused, not as many that are externally focused until they get some trust around the data and how it's being used. So it sounds like you guys have gone a little bit further. Certain AI, you are not new to the AI game here, just in the last year or two, but we do see a lot more pressure to get more and more value out of AI use cases. So we are seeing
Yeah.
that coming. We that's a big focus for us, right? Is
Mhm.
how do we use AI to increase the speed with which you can drive a data management program? So that's
Yeah.
a lot of what Informatica is doing is to create efficiency. You know, one other area I'm curious about for you is there anything in particular where you think AI either represents an opportunity for women in particular or presents a challenge for women in particular?
Yeah, I think when we talk about AI, there's a tremendous landscape of opportunities for women. It's not just a buzzword anymore. It really is pervading in various industries, creating strong demand for diverse skill sets. I mean, my team's a perfect example of that. My team requires technical skills, but a business sense associated with it. Being able to come in with the strategic thinking, the creativity, the design of how data is used. That's really important. And so I think it's not just confined to technical roles like data science and machine learning, like historically people have thought around AI and data is that you need to be only technical to be able to be successful in this world. we actually need women that are more around strategy and ethics and policy and user experience in the AI roles. So I think there's a huge opportunity for women to not just participate, but to lead in this field in areas like they may have not been in AI in the past, but their skills and experience can be leveraged very heavily in this world. So it shouldn't just be oh, I'm not technical, I'm not even going to go down that path. It's like, no, I'm technical or I'm not technical, but I have the right insight to say, what is the how should I think about this? What are the ethics behind it? What kind of policies can we create around it? But we tend to see a lot of women in those type of roles. So I think it creates opportunity in that way. It brings diversity in how we recognize AI in terms of like the perspective of people coming in. By having more women in the AI space, you're creating that diversity so that when you're creating models in AI areas that you have more women thinking in it. I'm not saying it's only men. There's plenty of women, especially as you hear in the organization at Visa, that are leading a lot of these efforts. So I would say that even though a lot of people tend to think of data and AI and as technical and like a man's world, I don't see that, to be honest. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for women to grow outside of data analytics and insight delivery to say, yeah, let's take this challenge and try something new. And we don't have to necessarily be fingers to keyboards technical, but we can understand the business problem behind it to be able to solve and really bring a new strategic outlook into AI. But when I think about challenges, I think there are still areas for that. Like women are underrepresented in the AI field. So I think just encouraging women to consider areas that are more STEM focused, I think is really important. Bringing the right education and training opportunities, I think is significant. Another area that I can tend to see challenges, and actually even going back to my healthcare space, is job displacement due to AI. A lot of AI, I think, can bring automated roles into less of a need. Like data entry, for example, education in some places, retail, workforces that are predominantly female, I think tend to sometimes be more repetitive in nature. And I think AI can actually replace some of that. And so there is a concern that I can see throughout, the AI world where it's like, oh, do I need to be worried about my role? Even from a data perspective, there's a lot of people who are in data that tend to be female, 50-50, I would say about, but so I think it's not just women. I think at that point it just becomes everybody. But when you're thinking about generative AI, you're taking away the insight delivery for some of the more high level insights that don't require a global thinking of the organization and their product, and you're eliminating that through AI. So that's a concern that I can see as well. And it also requires a commitment to continuous learning, and not everybody wants to do that. So there are people, women, I think, just because of the nature of having families and wanting work-life balance, to say, okay, I've met where I need to be today, and I'm good. But at the end of the day, it's a technology field, and you need to be able to constantly evolve with the technology. And so there's this kind of component of always needing to be ahead of it and learning and reading and understanding how it's evolving, because it's going to change all the time. So I think it's really crucial that we address this through continuous learning opportunities for women, fostering a culture that really does bring diversity and not making it seem like just because you're not technical you can't be in the AI world. And then encouraging STEM education for girls. I think that's a really important thing that we're seeing more of now that we haven't seen in the past, where it's you could be an engineer, you can be a data analytics professional, you can be an AI professional very much earlier on in the growth of girls. I think it tends to be like men are STEM and girls are more homemakers or healthcare workers or whatever it is. I think you can make that combination a lot earlier on, which I'm seeing a lot more of, which is nice.
Yeah, I've talked about this, and this is, I guess, this is regardless of gender or whatever. Is the biggest concern I think I have is the erosion of critical thinking skills, because
Mhm.
AI only can learn from what it has, and so
Right.
have to we can't rely on it so much that we don't try to think of the answer for ourselves. That we actually do some of the research, maybe use it as a co-pilot for an overused term, but
Yeah.
yeah, we erode our
It's
critical.
actually a perfect example. I've been using Copilot a lot lately because I really enjoy it. I think it's a great tool. But then I started to realize that it was referencing myself. And so I'm like, I need something outside of myself because I'm trying to use this to educate myself more and bring a thought like consensus down and synthesize information. But then I'm like, oh, wait, that's my email it's referencing and it's my chat that it's referencing. So there's the pros and the cons, of course. It's still an evolution. I think it'll look very different in 5 years than it does today. But That's why I think it's really smart for us to think about making sure if we're in a role that could be replaced by AI, upskilling ourselves and making sure that we're creating a market where there's still a need for our skills, but more technical in some natures, or moving into a more STEM based field where it may not exist in 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We have to keep a continuous eye and anticipate trends and get ready for them. I think the days of kind of staying sort of, I don't know if stagnant's the right word, but staying in the same role for 20 years, or the market moves very quickly now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 5 years. Well, I want to give you a second. We're coming to a close here. The time together went by really fast, but do you have any final thoughts or advice that you would give people who are early in their journey? You guys, you're pretty mature in your journey, but what would you tell people who are early in the journey, things to think about or be aware of?
Are you saying in the journey of AI or just the journey of data?
Of AI and data, how to use it. I think they go
I would
together.
say leverage it. I would definitely say leverage AI as much as possible, but understand the underbelly of what's creating it. I think the biggest thing around AI is it is an amazing tool to be able to help us learn quicker and move faster and create efficiencies and work cheaper, if you will. But if we don't understand what the inputs are and the baseline for how it's being built and where the information is being sourced from, it can become a black box very quickly. And then we just become, like you said, lack of critical thinking skills. We lose our ability to think critically through something because we're relying on our question to be answered. I don't know if you remember Ask Jeeves. You ask Jeeves a question and it pops back. I feel like very quickly we can get away from that. And I actually see that a lot with Copilot or even ChatGPT, where things that used to take me a couple hours to research on why am I getting this syntax error, or what does it actually mean to be able to calculate something in this way using advanced analytics, now just gives me the answer instantly. So there's no critical thinking or trying to understand. So especially when it comes to data and coding and SQL and that whole world that has developed data insights that generative AI is built off of, because it really is a lot of ways a SQL script, if you will. I don't know if that's the right way of describing it, but it really is. You've lost that critical thinking because the machine's doing it for you. So I would just encourage us to embrace it, but also understand it at the same time.
It would have made me a far less grumpier programmer back in the day. Oh,
I agree. I remember reading the code and being like not able to sleep well, and I had a lot of anxiety. But thinking back now and like seeing even my team, they're all super smart, really incredible people. But I can now also see shortcuts happening where I'm like, oh, if you only understood why that syntax existed or why it was written that way, I think it would go a lot further in your understanding and the strategic thinking around it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, well, Heather, I want to thank you for joining me today. And please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews that we're going to have. So thank you.
Thank you.